Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And there are just two things that the Deputy Chief Minister's statement that are actually true. And one is the irresponsibly scrapping of the Northern Territory's renewable targets is now official, and that two, they are putting Territorians' power prices up, which we expected all along, even prior to the NT election. Madam Speaker, the rest of the statement that has been provided by the Deputy Chief Minister is just absolute and utter nonsense. But what else do we expect from the member for Nelson? Madam Speaker, make no mistake, the CLP government are scrapping the renewables targets not just because they can't do it, it's because they want to scrap it. They don't want to do the hard work that has been laid out before them, and they certainly don't want to listen to the many thousands and thousands of Territorians who expect the Territory government to take on that hard workload and to work in the renewables space and to have that great balance of energy and efficiency when it comes to supplying power for Territorians and growing the Territory economy. So, Madam Speaker, before I start my response, I just want to say a big thank you to the many people who are working in those government-owned corporations. Thank you to the many people who are working for the Power and Water Corporation, from the linesmen to the executive leadership and beyond. We know that the work that PwC do to make sure that Territorians have access to essential services, that those lines are cleared when we have these big weather events like what we've seen over the last couple of months with the almost wet season but not quite, and when we are in times of severe weather here in the Territory, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the hard workers of 𝘵𝘺𝘳 Energy and the great and efficient work that is led by their executive to ensure that customer service has been improved year on year to make sure the experience of 𝘵𝘺𝘺 and the service of 𝘵𝘺𝘺 is of the highest quality. So thank you to all those great workers in 𝘵𝘺𝘺. And Territory Generation, or TGen for short, Madam Speaker, a huge shout out to our provider of last resort when it comes to energy and TGen and the great work that they do right across the Northern Territory. And Madam Speaker, I thought it was an extremely low blow from the Deputy Chief Minister to speak about and to verbal the chair of TGen, who is an absolutely highly regarded and very competent and very well positioned and placed chair to do the job. We're talking about, and he was a bit too shy to say it in Parliament, but he did put it out in his written statement, Mr Denis Bree, Madam Speaker, a civil engineer with decades and decades of experience. Mr Bree was involved in the recovery of Cyclone Tracy here in Darwin when I believe the Deputy Chief Minister was about 4 years old. Mr Bree was the Executive Director of Power and Water, Madam Speaker. Mr Bree was the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Department of Business. And Mr Bree was known across the Territory, again, highly regarded by many professionals, by many businesses, regardless of political colour, Madam Speaker. He is a well-regarded professional with high integrity and extremely high levels of experience when it comes to engineering. And I hope that the Deputy Chief Minister is not blinded by the colours of his political party to actually see through when you have great people in the Territory who do their best, regardless of who's in government, who are professional at every single step of their career and their and their professional journey to go beyond politics and actually represent Territory's best interests in the professions that they embark on. We would hope, Madam Speaker, that the CLP government and whoever is in it and whoever's the leader at the time will pay homage to that and recognise and acknowledge the great work that Territorians do, regardless of whatever somebody's political values are. So, Madam Speaker, in government, Territory Labor made massive inroads when it came to achieving that energy target. Territory was on track to achieve it, and again we're seeing the CLP government remove any mechanism or measure of accountability through, and now unfortunately through, the energy and renewables sector. We know to ensure energy stability and affordability, hard work has to be laid, and it is the right thing to do, Madam Speaker, for Territorians now and into the future. And it is nothing short of an absolute disgrace, Madam Speaker, that the CLP are turning their backs on this energy target. It is abundantly clear why they're doing it. It's because of Peter Dutton's bidding for the territory and some of the unpopular announcements that he have made, but the CLP is going to blindly support and follow him into the federal election. So they're trying to make a stance here to try and support Peter Dutton all the way from Little NT to make the territory short-sighted just for the next federal election, as opposed to seeing the longer picture, the hard road that needs to be followed when it comes to ensuring Territorians have a diversity of energy sources, Madam Speaker. And I think it's just appalling that they are so blindly short-sighted because of politics. Madam Speaker, this is not just the actions of a government that Territorians think are already being less and less open and accountable and transparent, but it is the actions of a government who does not have Territorians' best interests at heart. What we're seeing the CLP government do is taking their marching orders from their political masters in Canberra, not thinking about the people who they represent, which are Territorians. Madam Speaker, securing our energy future should be a critical priority of any Northern Territory government, and it is something that our former Labor team worked hard to achieve because it is an extremely complex matter, Madam Speaker, and I had the fortune and opportunity to be Energy and Renewables and Essential Services Minister for a time in our former government, and I learnt so much because we have such skill and quality here in the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker, when it comes to the vision of energy and securing energy and continuing to look at diversifying the energy sector in the Northern Territory. And I absolutely take my hat off to all of those who are working in the energy sector and who have provided proposals, those proponents who are working here in the Northern Territory to make sure that not just energy is secured for the Northern Territory, for Australia and the international market, but that there are jobs. There are skills and jobs and opportunities for Territorians to work in the energy sector and the industry here in the Territory, Madam Speaker, which will of course grow the Territory's economy. So to hear this today from the Deputy Chief Minister on behalf of the CLP government is an absolute disgrace. And other jurisdictions, Madam Speaker, are facing significant challenges, and they don't have the same level of resources as we do here in the Territory when it comes to the opportunities to grow the energy sector and to capitalise on the Australian energy market. We want to ensure that there's reliable and affordable energy supply for households and industries in the Territory, but we can grow the Territory's economy, Madam Speaker, because this is a big concern right across the country. And I don't know if the CLP are sitting there with their eyes closed and their ears closed, but this is national conversation about energy security. And yet here we are with the announcement from the Deputy Chief Minister today. It's just bizarre. Again, Madam Speaker, no vision, no understanding, an absolute lack of credibility now when it comes to energy and renewables. Here, Madam Speaker, in the Territory, thanks to the strong decisions and policy settings made by the previous Labor government, we do have the right ingredients, not only for securing the energy supply for the Territory through a mix of gas and renewables, but ensuring that we can leverage it to attract private market investment, Madam Speaker, and again, to grow the Territory's economy. In the first instance, Madam Speaker, our world-class gas resources, onshore and offshore, will ensure that we meet demand for cleaner, more affordable transition fuel sources right here in the Territory, and the impact it will have internationally and nationally, Madam Speaker, is extremely exciting. But it should not be the only energy source that we rely on to keep the lights on and to keep power costs down for Territorians. When the rest of the world is moving to sustainable, affordable renewables, Madam Speaker, we are seeing the CLP government put all of their eggs only in one basket, putting all of the money down the gas only. When we know, Madam Speaker, from all of the national conversations, the national experts and industry experts, that the mix of the supply needs to be diversified, and this is something the CLP government is completely naive to. It is beyond irresponsible to hear the announcement from the Deputy Chief Minister and the CLP government today. Underneath all the rhetoric and mistruths, Madam Speaker, that have been perpetuated today and this morning by the Deputy Chief Minister, it is clear that the CLP government has no interest in the development of renewable energy solutions and new technology because it will take hard work, Madam Speaker, and the CLP are absolutely not up to it. Madam Speaker, in government, Territory Labor had two clear plans. One was for gas and one was for renewables, and they were both working hand in hand. Just listen to those department experts that you get your briefing from, Deputy Chief Minister, and you'll probably learn a thing or two if you don't try and talk over them and ramble away. Madam Speaker, reliable, affordable and cleaner energy was the key focus of our former government's gas plan, which outlined a clear path to economic growth, energy security and environmental sustainability by 2030. What this plan does, Madam Speaker, or what this plan maybe did, now it's being scrapped, was to ensure that not only are we here in the Territory well placed to capitalise on our resource strengths, to create jobs and local business opportunities, but that we can continue to keep energy costs down for fellow Territorians, the people that we represent, Madam Speaker. And what we heard the Deputy Chief Minister talk about today around blacktip. Apparently it's the first time he's ever heard of the issues of supply chain and the challenges of those wells. Where has the Deputy Chief Minister been for the past 4.5 years as a Member of Parliament, Madam Speaker? Not paying attention, not doing his job, not listening to the key issues that affect Territorians and our market when it comes to the energy sector? Crazy. This is old news, Madam Speaker. It's something that the previous Labor government had to work and manage through, and it's exactly what we did. It was challenging, it was complex, but indeed the work was done to ensure the lights were kept on for Territorians through a very difficult and stressful time. Madam Speaker, the Deputy Chief Minister claims that the former Labor government didn't tell anyone about this, and his claims are absolute nonsense. He is the only one that didn't bother to keep up, and he should be ashamed for announcing how ignorant he has been on this topic. Madam Speaker, if the Deputy Chief Minister is so interested in transparency, then perhaps he can update Territorians about where his CLP government is at the moment with this particular matter. While dealing with that unforeseen gas supply issue, Madam Speaker, the former Labor government got on with securing alternative gas supplies to keep the lights on and the power costs down for Territorians well into the future. And in the first half of last year, of 2024, the former Labor government signed 3 energy security arrangements with gas-producing companies, Tamboran Resources, Energy Empire and Central Petroleum. The partnership with Tamboran will provide competitively priced gas to Territory power generators for 9 years from next year, 2026, with an option to extend beyond that. The deal with Central Petroleum from the Mereenie and the Palm Valley fields will see local gas supplies secured for over a 6-year period. Meanwhile, Madam Speaker, Empire Energy is expecting first gas from its Carpentaria pilot project early next year in 2026, once all the approvals are in. I had the pleasure of meeting with representatives from Empire just last week, Madam Speaker, and they are very excited at where the progress is. Madam Speaker, Empire Energy are particularly pleased that their first gas will go to the Territory and Territorians first, providing us with competitively priced gas until 2035. This is Northern Territory gas supplied to Territorians, Madam Speaker, ensuring a secure and affordable energy supply for many years to come, all negotiated and signed off under the former Territory Labor government. Madam Speaker, it is one thing to see commercial success out of precious natural resources here in the Territory, but what we've seen and what happens when we don't reserve resources for our own use in the first instance is something that we can learn from. And that's why our former Labor government made sure that the first customers for gas from the Beetaloo will be Territorians, Madam Speaker. And as I said, the Territory is going about its business in partnership with the gas sector for many, many years. And it's time, Madam Speaker, that the Deputy Chief Minister and his CLP team catches up on that. And it's time that the Deputy Chief Minister is honest with Territorians instead of misleading and being irresponsible with the statement that he has just delivered, and might I add, Madam Speaker, the media release that was put out today. Madam Speaker, here in the Territory, it is inevitable position of having large amounts of both we are in an enviable position of having large amounts of both renewable and natural gas energy supplies. We are leveraging both, and we should be, Madam Speaker. Territory Labor absolutely supports renewables and the future of energy production, and we have so much potential here in the Territory, and particularly around economic growth. And while natural gas has been here, we will continue to be an indispensable part of the Northern Territory's electricity generation mix. And we need to continue to develop our renewable energy infrastructure across the Territory and the capacity to further support low-cost energy to Territory households and to Territory businesses, and those businesses who want to come to the Territory. Madam Speaker, the former Labor government knew this a long time ago and set out a 2017 roadmap to renewables strategy in order to provide a pathway to transition to 50% renewables by 2030. And if you do the maths, the very simple Year 3 maths that the member for 𝘶𝘳𝘳𝘺𝘃, the Treasurer, talked about the other day, we haven't got to 2030 yet, Madam Speaker. So why do we see the CLP scrapping a target that keeps accountability and a future and a guideline around the energy sector, and particularly around renewable energy for the Territory? We have no idea, Madam Speaker. It does not have a single sense or clue about it. Through that strategy, Madam Speaker, the roadmap to renewables, the former Labor Territory government recognised the opportunity that renewables gave us to drive the economic development, as well as deliver cost-effective energy to Territorians and to Territory industry well into the future. The current CLP government supported this important and achievable aspiration when they were in opposition, but have now completely and utterly abandoned it in the first 7 months of coming to government. Let me make it very clear, Madam Speaker, we were well on track to meet this target, and any suggestion otherwise is a complete and utter lie and does not acknowledge the hard work of the many professionals in the energy sector, industry and the departments who provide that important advice to the ministers to make their decision about the future of the Northern Territory. So the member for Brennan, apparently, Madam Speaker, is an energy expert and has already predicted the future, and good on her, but I don't think many Territorians would take her word over the experts and the energy advice that we see, not just from department officials, but also from energy proponents and the industry that looks after those important decisions around commercial investment for the Northern Territory. So if the member for Brennan knows something that all of them don't, it would be very interesting for her to share this morning on what that is and how she is an expert in energy. Madam Speaker, I would strongly suggest that the CLP caucus members themselves, particularly the backbenchers, ask for briefings through their ministers and their departments and get themselves educated about this extremely important issue for the Northern Territory, because obviously their leadership team is not being honest with them. So how can we expect that they'll be honest with Territorians, Madam Speaker? It is the CLP government members that will be the ones that will have to answer, not just to your own electorates that you represent, but to all of our electorates, Madam Speaker, that we represent in this place, and to the future generations of the Northern Territory, and why they've made this pitiful, disgraceful and shameful decision not based on any science or expertise. Madam Speaker, we have made significant progress in securing a future for Territorians that is powered by renewables, that works with the gas industry and focuses on the reduction of emissions and keeps power prices down for Territorians. And as I said earlier, we've been working towards this for many, many years here in the Northern Territory, and there is an absolutely clear plan articulated through our roadmap to renewables strategy that was developed by the Northern Territory government, developed by experts in the field and backed by science. What the Deputy Chief Minister failed to talk about is the significant work that the former Labor government did towards the 50% renewables target by 2030. We've made important strategic investments in the Northern Territory when it comes to utility-scaled solar and batteries, and to enable even greater uptake of renewables across our grids, which is what Territorians constantly speak about, Madam Speaker. Under the former Labor government, the Darwin-Katherine area was a key focus for renewable energy and uptake, with the Darwin-Katherine system providing electricity to 150,000 Territorians. That included households and businesses. To switch to renewables is not without its challenges and certainly not a simple thing, Madam Speaker. It is a comparatively small grid compared to the rest of the country, so economies of scale are difficult to manage here in the Territory. But as we've shown from the past, Madam Speaker, it can be done. And of course, to acknowledge that the Territory is a remote jurisdiction, our conditions, particularly in the environment, are harsh, and our populations are small and dispersed across the beauty of the Territory. But when Labor was in government, we were up to that challenge, Madam Speaker, unlike those opposite who were in government. To help address these challenges, the former Labor government invested in the $45 million Darwin-Katherine Battery Energy Storage System, or DKBESS, most people would have heard that term, that acronym, to be delivered by Territory Generation at Channel Island Power Station. The DKBESS is designed to support the Darwin-Katherine system, which is the largest usage of power system in the Territory, stabilising it for increased solar use, including its integration into the grid and replacing some gas-fired generation at the Channel Island Power Station. This investment reduces our reliance on gas generation, Madam Speaker, and delivers cost savings of up to $10 million per year and eliminates upwards of 60,000 tonnes of carbon emissions each year here in the Territory. And, Madam Speaker, the best thing, it'll pay for itself in just 5 years. This is the story that the Deputy Chief Minister has failed to acknowledge or tell in his statement today. And I would like to ask, Madam Speaker, of the government, particularly the Deputy Chief Minister, the member for Nelson, Gerard Maylie, where is the DKBESS project up to? And has the CLP government switched it off? But, Madam Speaker, Territory Labor didn't just stop at the DKBESS. We also invested in DKBESS 2 to further support the grid. This second phase project was aimed at delivering large-scale batteries across locations on the Darwin-Katherine power system to further boost capability and stability. This is due to be commissioned next year in 2026. So it'd be great to hear from the CLP if this is something that is continuing and it will be on track. Madam Speaker, will the Deputy Chief Minister update Territorians on where this project is at? Or again, has the CLP just scrapped it with a swipe of a pen rather than listening to the experts and having any type of vision about energy future and security in the Territory? And if you want to stand in this House, Madam Speaker, anybody to talk about renewables, then it would be great that they tell Territorians the full story and not just the little patchy parts we've heard from the Deputy Chief Minister. Madam Speaker, what these investments mean is that more Territory households and businesses can reliably make the switch to solar to keep their power bills down and the costs down. In government, Territory Labor incentivised Territorians to do just that, Madam Speaker, and we now lead the nation when it comes to the highest proportion of solar PV systems installed with a battery at over 30% compared to the national average of just 6%. Again, a big piece of the story that the Deputy Chief Minister, Gerard Maylie, has left out of his statement today. Why? Because they are a government who cherry-picks what they tell Territorians, and sooner or later, when Territorians start to hear parts of the story and not the full story, they will be making up their minds about how disingenuous the CLP government is with giving them the accountability and openness and transparency of the stories of government decisions that they promised they would do in the election. Madam Speaker, at the time of the highly successful Home and Business Battery Scheme, the most generous assistance program in the country for small-scale batteries. It was a great feat for the Northern Territory to be there and at that high level. And we acknowledge, Madam Speaker, that the CLP government has introduced its own scheme, and we feel, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the average Territorian will never be in a position to avail themselves the full amount of the grant, unfortunately. It sounds good and on paper it looks good, but you'd need to see an investment and a huge and expensive battery to get the full benefit of what the CLP scheme is offering, which unfortunately will not suit most Territory households. And Madam Speaker, if you are interested in the new scheme the CLP has announced, it will run out, we understand, at the end of this year, so you need to get in quick if you're one of the few people who will be able to access it. Madam Speaker, when Labor was in government, we did much more in the renewables space. We signed off from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency for 16 community batteries in various locations along the Darwin-Katherine electricity grid, expanding rooftop solar capacity and keeping power prices down. The 𝘍𝘯𝘦𝘳𝘺 solar farm project on on Bathurst Island in the Tiwis, which was moving forward and towards a battery storage project, was something that was started under our former Labor government. The remote power system strategy, which was focused on delivering an average of 70%, Madam Speaker, renewable energy to 72 remote communities across the Northern Territory. And we provided further investment in rolling out solar and batteries in our remote communities. Madam Speaker, the Deputy Chief Minister needs to tell Territorians whether his government will go ahead with these critical investments that will go a long way to our renewables target for Territorians, and particularly those in remote, to keep power costs down and keep our power stable, but particularly in our remote areas as well. Madam Speaker, the former Labor government also established an Office of Sustainable Energy to oversee the progress of the 50% target by 2030 for the Northern Territory. As with so many initiatives aimed at ensuring Territory moves forward for a sustainable future, we are not even sure, Madam Speaker, if the CLP government has continued to support the Office of Sustainable Energy. And it would be great if one of the CLP members could provide a confirmation either way, but still going, or if you scrapped it, as this is most important to understand what some of the priorities are for the government. Madam Speaker, we know the cost of living and energy security are two of the biggest issues for Territorians, which is why it remains critical that the CLP government remains focused on ensuring Territory residents, Territory businesses and Territory industries have access to reliable and affordable power via a mix of energy sources. And we know that means continuing to progress with gas and renewables together for many years to come, Madam Speaker. The Deputy Chief Minister gave us a one-on-one lecture on how community service obligation payments work, and I think he pretty much cut and pasted it from his incoming minister's brief. His statement certainly didn't create any imagination, and only demonstrated that he has basically a grade 3 level understanding of energy production and supply. And I honestly feel like the Deputy Chief Minister gave us a primary school report on energy in the House. I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that Territorians who understand the community service obligation or the CSO payments, but we heard the 101 explanation regardless. But the most important thing that Territorians need to understand about the CSO, Madam Speaker, is it keeps and maintains power costs down in Territorians, so it means less money paid on power and more money in Territorians' pockets. Somehow the CLP has dressed that up as being a bad thing, which I find, again, quite bizarre. Those payments come out of the budget, yes, because they're taxpayers' money being beneficial for taxpayers, and the CLP and the Deputy Chief Minister doesn't seem to understand the connection, and again, that's bizarre to me, Madam Speaker. But I know that Territorians understand that, and they'll definitely understand that when they see their power prices hike now under the CLP government. Madam Speaker, in the last Territory budget, there was a significant increase for the CSO payment, and purely to keep the cost of power down for Territorians in the cost of living crisis. We saw the federal government's energy bill relief of $300 for every household combined with our CSO payments to ensure that more Territorians benefited from this. And Madam Speaker, we were absolutely upfront when we were in government about the vision, about the way forward for energy and the opportunities for energy in the Northern Territory, and we are certainly proud of this legacy. But sadly, Madam Speaker, it looks like it will just be a legacy based on the CLP's statement today based on their very poor attempt to hide the 3% power hike that they have announced for Territorians today. Absolutely dishonesty and a lot of hot air from the Deputy Chief Minister. They should be ashamed, Madam Speaker.